Again, just to let everybody know that we are recording this session, so that just in case anybody wants to relive their favourite moments, they can do so by looking at the recordings. We've also got quite an interesting back catalogue of previous discussions. I'll stick a link into the chat in just a second for that. The other thing that I just wanted to let people know about before I hand over is that the next session, it's going to be on pluriversality and the fusion of horizons in design education. So this is by yet another Open University colleague, Folasea Olaleri. And what's going to be interesting about Fola's talk is that this will be probably practical examples of not just decolonisation as a position, but actually enacting it, if you like, through certain design practices around different sort of education spaces around the world. So that should be quite an interesting one to watch out. So I have put a link to that next session for next month in the chat there. But today we have the fantastic Muriel Sippel with us today, and Nicole Lotz, of course, who are going to talk about creative thinking and mental well-being. And I think if it's okay, Nick, I'll just hand over to you to go for it.
My lovely task is only to introduce Muriel, really, and then help with chairing the discussion. So we have hopefully a lot of space left after a few inspiring slides from Muriel to talk about exactly that issue, also building on your own experience. But first of all, so Muriel has been with the OU for 14 years, but just basically stopped her associate lecturer career to fully dedicate her life to her PhD, and I'm sure some other things too. And the PhD is actually on that particular topic, mental well-being, and how that connects to creative thinking, and how creative thinking can support mental health well-being of our students and maybe ourselves as well. So we have been working on some scholarship work before that got us really focused on that topic. And what else to say? No, I think that's actually is it, Muriel? Can I hand over to you and to start your session?
Yeah, sure. Fine. Thank you, Nicole, and thank you, Derek. Thank you, and thank you too to DRS for the opportunity to share my research. Can you all hear me fine? Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. So my research, or my research question, or my starting point of my research: how does creative design thinking enable distance design learners to develop and maintain their mental well-being? So as Nicole said, I too have worked with the university, but I'm now just a research student. So we received an award for our scholarship work in STEM with Open University, which was a huge surprise, but also recognition for what we found out from our work, which has also been feeding into my PhD. So my role, as Nicole alluded to, has been a design education tutor in design higher education since 2011. As well as being a secondary tutor as well since the year 2000. So lots of teaching of design to all kinds of students at all levels. But my passion for teaching, my passion for design teaching has come from my motivation from my work in design and design engineering at the UK and the USA, as well as from within my family, but also my passion to ensure that my teaching is inclusive, because I think it's really important that I thought it was really important that my teaching was as inclusive as possible. So, and in particular for design learning, I'm very passionate about making sure that everyone can have an opportunity. Possibly because I was told as a girl that no, I couldn't. So perhaps that was a good motivation. Girls don't do technology. But anyway, so how best can I support you with your learning? So that passion for being inclusive in my teaching. started from my welcome letter with my students. And I would always ask the question, how best can I support you with your learning needs? How can I help you to achieve? How can I support you beyond the information that I've got in front of me as your tutor from your student information? Are there things that I need to know that will help you with you, that I can help you overcome in order to help you with your learning? So over the years, these responses to these questions have got, some of them have been quite detailed and can be quite emotive. So my own well-being was important too. And then some of them are quite concise, but in other times those answers did not always come through until further in the module. So these responses could turn up at any time. But I have noticed over the time that these of my own observations, that the support that the students needed was becoming more and more, or more than I'd anticipated. And often it came as a consequence of well-being and sharing their experiences or their emotions because we're a distance tutor, we're often the first port of call. So they're the first person they might have opened up to. So my role as a tutor would not only be pastoral, but also with the study skills. So I found that I needed to gain a wider understanding of the needs of my tutor group, and so that I could understand how best I could support them and how best I could ask for the university to support them. As we're all aware that we have a role as a tutor, but we're supported too with our colleagues from student services, and who also need to know how best they can help them. So often the case that because I studied at a distance with the Open University, so I too would bring in my own personal experiences to understand or share with my students, so I could help support them. So how I would overcome meeting a deadline, or how I would overcome my caring responsibilities, or different study times and things like that. So I would share my experiences as a distance learner to help support my students. Now, all these experiences and these questions that came from me asking this question to help develop my own practice have then led me to me wanting to develop my own understanding further, and to understand how I can make a difference, or why, or when I have made a difference, why did it make a difference? Because if I knew that if I could get the support of, if I could get the understanding of the students on my side, or if I could get them to share their experiences and to share what made things difficult, and I could help them to overcome these, I knew that I could help them complete the module. But why was this working? So that has led me to my PhD. So these observations, my observations were backed up by the data. When I first started my PhD in 2020, 15% of my tutor group would declare a disability profile, but there would always be another 3 or 4 that were undeclared, that would respond to my question and possibly share more about their mental health. By 2023, 2024, those numbers were increasing to would be 6 or 7 which actually identifying with a disability profile, and there would be another 3 or 4 students that would share their mental health challenges that hadn't declared. So the impact or the need to support the students with their well-being, with their health, their mental health, it wasn't just for a few, it was for a greater number. And then too, I knew from my own experiences, without looking at the data, that the numbers of people that were dropping out of the course were increasing, but the data backed that up too. So these were important triggers and first insights that have helped to give me direction to my research question and the other research questions that have evolved from it, as well as to the scholarship work that we have been working with. But understandably, to help develop my questions further, I needed to be able to understand more about mental well-being. What is mental well-being? It's something we strive for, all of us. Yet we know that some days are better than others. The World Health Organization has made it a strategic goal for communities to strive for, or to enable access to good mental health for everyone. So it's something we are all interested in, no matter where we live. And other institutions, organizations are making it part of their own policies. So what is good mental health? We're happy, we're open-minded, we're positive. We're able to solve a problem or work with life's challenges. We know when we can do this well, but we also know when some days go better than others. If something's really if we're uncertain about something, we can cope with it. We can work out ways to overcome it. We can make something more certain, be reassured about what we're doing. We're able to socialize, we can talk to others. And we want to learn new things, especially if we've relocated or if we're trying to have a study goal. We're wanting to learn. We're happy to take it. We're happy to be organized about our learning. We're happy to learn new things, new concepts. We're happy to participate. We're happy to contribute. We're happy to share our ideas with others. And if other people might give other suggestions or might give us some critique, we can take that critique positively. That's when our mental well-being is healthy, or is where we want it to be. But we also know that there are times, and for some people those times are more often than others, that mental well-being can change. So, mental health challenges. We know that mental health challenges, possibly from our own experiences or from people around us, that our mental health can become more difficult when life circumstances change. So perhaps we're grieving, or perhaps there's bereavement, or perhaps we've been forced to relocate. These things can happen to people across the world. Or our mental health challenges can come from more permanent challenges, and perhaps we are someone that does actually suffer from depression or anxiety or PTSD, or perhaps we are someone who's neurodiverse, in which case the mental health challenges can arise more frequently or can be more complex. Dependent on where we're at with our neurodiversity. Do we understand our own limitations? Have we been supported in understanding how neurodiverse we are? So as Fusar Purley and their team built up this continuum, this picture to show, so the little pink dots in the diagram show that our individuals, so we can be anywhere on this spectrum, on this so we can either be more, if it's temporary mental health challenges, then we can possibly more be in the top quartile, the right hand quartile, or the bottom, so that less mental health, but that can get worse. Or if we have a mental disorder, that when Fusar Poli were writing this, severe mental disorder was a way of the language that was used for talking about what we now say as know as or will comment as mental health challenges. So we can be anywhere on this spectrum at different times, and our students can be anywhere on this spectrum at different times. But if we do have these mental health challenges, we know that we can be overwhelmed, insecure, we struggle to socialize, we have that fear of the unknown, we only manage one and cope with one thing at a time. So understandably, if we're learning, if we're trying to study, or we've embarked on a course that we're wanting for our study goal, and life has thrown a mental health challenge in our to cope with, then we also know that that's going to impact on our extensions that make it be difficult. If we can't plan very well, then we're going to struggle to meet an assignment. And we possibly feel by feeling insecure, then we're more likely to ask for reassurance. So you get in touch with your tutor. When we're working with assignments, if we're struggling, if our mental health is not at our best, our responses can be quite limited when we're exploring ideas. If we struggle to, tutorials are a no-no. If we have got the courage to attend a tutorial, we probably just sit and listen. We don't contribute or give any or ask any questions because we're struggling with the concepts, and because we've got other things on our mind. And if we do get any feedback, we possibly ignore it because we're not sure how to deal with it. And if we do get critical feedback, we could see it as a failure. I've made a mistake. I didn't do the right thing. But understandably, these are not skills. These are not things that are going to work well with creative design thinking. So perhaps it was the next stage was to think more about what is creative design thinking. When we're working with our students, when we're as a design tutor, what is it that we are trying to encourage them to learn? Within creative design thinking at Open University in our level 1 modules, we encourage them to, we introduce to them the concept of problem framing as part of this creative design thinking process. We use the problem framing to help widen their ideas. We use it as a starting point for their assignments, for the theme of the products that they're going to work with. We then use it as a checklist, for that reflective checklist, to help them work out how well they're meeting that problem frame, how they've framed the problem for the product that they're wanting to work with. We're wanting them to consider different perspectives. We are aware of different needs. So when we frame the problem, we bring in these different needs. We all know that if that design cycle is going well, if that flow of creativity will start growing. And we're also happy we want them to be able to accept uncertainty, that it's good to try things, it's good to explore things. We need to, but in order to find these things out, to understand people's needs, to work with our framed problem, we need to be able to communicate with other people. So whether it's the people around us, whether it's the people in our studio, whether it's our tutors. So we know these are important. This will help us to develop our product to meet the needs of the audience that we are aiming for. So as a distance design learner, to be able to do these things, we have to also teach our students about how to learn new technologies. So our design studio is something that we called Open Studio, that we use, where it's a digital online studio where people can post their ideas, and then they can share, give each other feedback and support, so that this helps builds up their design portfolio. Because we're working online, we use forums, so again, to give feedback or to ask questions, to discuss opinions about products or experiences with existing products, for example, or other topics such as sustainability or manufacturing processes and things like that. We also, it's an opportunity on our forums is to share explanations about different design concepts or different design influences. And then understandably, we're all familiar with and or aware of the design software that we can work with. And we'll encourage students to explore their skills through the software that's available to them. And often their students will come, university students will come to Open University to be able to learn the skills that they need for this software. So we have a wider range of tools for communicating and expressing our ideas when we're working with creative design thinking. We value critical feedback, and we want our design learners to value critical feedback, to not see it as a mistake, to not see it as something that's negative. We want them to value that critical feedback as that positive, that they can explore their ideas further. We want them to be able to take risks, and they're happy to be able to take risks, to be more innovative with their ideas, because we know that will widen their design cycle, that it will become more iterative, and it will create that product that is going to meet the needs of the people that they're aiming for. So with this understanding in place, so not of the mental health, a wider understanding of mental health, a wider understanding of mental health challenges, a wider understanding of creative design thinking with the approaches of the learners that I was working with. My questions evolved. So I had my initial question about the creative design thinking as to whether it can help well-being. But further questions starting or to widen this understanding, deeper questions were arising. So how does creative design thinking effectively enhance the learner's cognitive flexibility to motivate a positive change in behavior and mental well-being? Again, this came from reflections that if I could better understand their mental well-being and suggest ways of how they could overcome it, I knew that I could get a deeper, more involved, iterative design cycle from them that met their that would help them create their products at level 1. But I could also knew that those skills would help them go further into their design modules and become more innovative with their ideas. And at the same time, I knew that the responses that I was receiving, the emotions that were coming out in their assignments were more positive. So how could I find this out? Why was this happening? Why is this cognitive flexibility motivating this change in well-being? Which reliable interventions support a design learner to access good mental health whilst developing key design study skills? So what things would work? What changes do we need to do to help make the modules more successful? How can we intervene to be able to help to ensure their mental health is strong so that they could then complete the module? I was concerned, and other people were concerned. Nicole, Derek, other people, we were concerned that things were not working out for them. We're losing students. how can distance design educators enable learners to use creative design thinking to achieve a personal learning goal, as well as develop and maintain their mental well-being? We know that if we can be more creative, that we can be more positive about our thinking, our approach to life, and possibly to improve our well-being, to help us with our learning goals, help us with our study goals or our career goals. So how might I find out more about this? So from these perspectives, there's scholarship work, this working with Nicole, working with other associate lecturers, and with at this particular time there were eight students that we, from 3 levels of design modules, that we were able to form case studies. We used Kate Lister's social model of disability to understand more about the tensions and the barriers and the enablers that go with learning at a distance. So educators, course designers and institutions can actively support students' well-being. I'm sure you're aware of good examples or within your own institutions. And it's something that people are constantly working at, in particular as our intake of students becomes more diverse. So we used Kate Lister's social model of disability to help inform our scholarship research, but keeping in mind that we wanted to understand about the progress of our students, or the lack of progress of our students, on why, and understand more about how we could support them. But the insights that we gained from our scholarship work, from the working with the 8 students and the 2 other associate lecturers, they reported the tensions, so the conflicts between the design learners and the delivery of the actual module, and how these also impacted on their well-being. But by talking to these students, through interviews, through diaries, through in the moment responses and things when they're working on assignments, we had gained an understanding on how, from their own experiences, they would overcome some of these barriers, and how they would then turn these barriers into neighbours, and how the tension, and we gained positive experiences and actual viable suggestions on how things could be resolved and tensions could be resolved to turn a barrier into an enabler. From that scholarship work, we gained a very good insight on how important student support is to the actual student as a distance learner. As I explained earlier, often the first port of call was your tutor, or is your tutor. And like I said, often as a tutor, we would gain quite a detailed insight as to how the learner was working and the problems and the challenges that they were having to overcome, especially if you could build up that secure relationship when you're working with them or supporting them. So support, and we learned from our scholarship work that students not only use support from from their tutor, but they will go to student services at times if they have the confidence to, but they also turn to the people around them, so their family. When you're working at a distance, understandably you haven't got your fellow students quite so easily at hand, but you have got your family members, or the people that are part of your community, or so if you're a carer, it's the person that you're caring. If you've got friends around you or family around you, they can be supportive and will help you with your studies. There are help guides on our study websites. There is the generic one, but there's also help guides on the actual module website. So again, there was a need to review those and making sure that they worked well. But they often, I found as a tutor, that the student would not always go to the help guide. They'd come to you first, but sometimes you would have to suggest that they possibly go to the help guide because there was information, or the help guide would back up what you were saying. As a distance tutor, the main port of call, the main port of support for you would be that email, messaging services, phone calls. Phone calls tend to get less and less as years have gone on. People seem to be less reluctant to actually talk to people. They're more likely to email. And then understandably, every now and again there is that face-to-face, but if you're in a brick institution, then understandably that face-to-face is more frequent. But there is no doubt that even though my tutor, as my role, was not expecting me to reply, even though my manager was not expecting me to reply quickly, my students did expect quick responses. But from our scholarship work, we learned that those quick responses are really important because they stop the worry, the anxiety, that if they're waiting and that insecurity, because all those things, if they're waiting a long time from a response from the tutor, all those things could then grow into something that's more anxious, more depressed. So those quick responses are really important. So as a design learner, that pastoral guidance is important. And sometimes it's a case that as a tutor, you would know more about the students. So it's really important that you share that with student services so that they can help them on the information, because in particular, if they have not declared it in a profile and you know that information, then that information helps you with their learning, but also if you share it with student services, that will help them. That tutor guidance, as a distance learner tutor, students would come to you as their first port call because they saw it as a reliable and secure source of information. Even though it might be more student services orientated, they would come to your tutor first. So as a tutor, as a design tutor, they did come to me for the more specialist design knowledge, but other things as well. So I had to extend my role so that I could, in some respects, to be more pastoral, so that I could support them quickly. Okay. Something else that has also come from the developments from our scholarship work and from further research is that the introduction of quiet forums and quiet tutorials has had a positive effect on the on design learners. In particular, for those students that struggle to socialize because of their well-being or because they're neurodiverse, for example, that quiet forum and that quiet tutorial is important. So in a quiet tutorial, for example, I would say that I would not expect they don't have that. I would explain the concepts and it's up to them whether they whether they contribute. There would be no questions asking for a contribution. And by saying that it was a quiet tutorial and there was no expectations for them to join in, that meant that more people would join the tutorial. It was a different concept as a tutor in not having anyone having a conversation with you or trying to get any feedback, but it is something that but it did mean that more students became involved in the topics that you were bringing out in the tutorial. And obviously, because we are distance learning, all of our tutorials are online, and all of our forums of conversations are online. So our scholarship work gave us lots of ideas, lots of suggestions, lots of tested ideas on how things could be improved. And we fed this into, and this was taken to the curriculum design team, who have made developments in to the curriculum design, to module materials, to assessment materials and supporting strategies, to not only enable the student but also to assist the tutor. So because we have open admissions at Open University, our level 1 modules are not only a baseline for the design skills, but they're also a baseline for the core study skills. So the information or the data that we gathered and the insights that we gathered from our scholarship work and the observations and the discussions from working with other associate lecturers and the case studies gave us the information that we needed to help improve materials and to help improve assessment, so that we could better support students, but also that understandably also assisted the tutor in how they could support students. We know that good assessment evaluates and grades the students' understanding and application of the module concepts, but in that assessment we assume that the student understands the concepts and the assessment guidance, but that's not, as we appreciate, that's not always the case. So the distance design learners do require that additional set of skills to use the online technologies, not only to enable them to study, but also to enable them to use their design skills at a distance, but also to be able to complete their assessed design projects. Okay, so all these skills, this multitude, this complex web of skills needs to come from the website and the materials that as a university we share with our students. So understandably, these because they're not only working with the design concepts and learning how to study in a different environment than what they may have done when they've done their initial studies in school and secondary education, and they're learning to work at a distance, the pressures to perform can be quite intense and stressful, and they're more isolated. So and things like assignment deadlines add to this even further. And the challenges arise from this overload and working with the flow, or not appreciating uncertainty. We're not able, if we're working with our design product, we're working through this iterative cycle, we're not actually able to share this with other people directly, as we would in a design studio, in a face-to-face design studio. Okay, so our forums and our open studio are important if we're happy to use them. And that assumption that failure is, when we're working on assignments, students don't always want to, design students don't always want to take those risks because they think it might affect their marks. Okay, so understandably, all these pressures, learning new technologies, learning new study skills, but can then have a huge impact on mental well-being. Okay, so that curriculum design is important. And from our scholarship we learned even more how even more important it is. So that scholarship that we worked with, or the work that we came from our scholarship and further developments with further research, have alluded to the fact that we needed to contextual the videos that we have within our website for the level 1 design module needed to contextualize the assignment with examples, so we could explain the tutor's thoughts on what constitutes good quality and how they assess their design work. We needed to use the language of design, so the hidden curriculum was more explicit. We needed to explain these concepts and apply them more and give them examples to help them understand them, so that they could then transfer that to their own experiences. We did find that originally we used Compendium, which is a digital mind map that we could to submit our assignments on, but now students can use Compendium, but they can also use PowerPoint, which they're possibly more familiar with. So simplifying assignment instructions has made a difference. Giving them a choice in the submission, assignment submission, has helped to make a difference. Explaining that language of design and the concept that we're working with from different perspectives has helped to make a difference. So these improvements have not only been introduced into our existing module, this level 1 design module, and are being pushed through into the level 2 to other levels or further, but they've also been introduced or actual requirement for the new BDES qualification. So hopefully, the big inspiration for doing all these things and making these changes and understanding our tutor groups more, the inspiration for all these things is to help give these people their self-esteem, to help these people be more confident as a person, confident with their own decisions, willing to communicate and work with others, to share their thinking, to help them have the belief in their capacity to complete a task or achieve a goal, and to help give them the motivation and the appreciation that they can do things in small steps and large steps to achieve their goals. So as design learners, they can complete their assignments. They can complete in their assignments, they're working with a product. So they complete a product. They complete their design modules, those small steps. And then that small step goes from a small step to a large step in helping them achieve their design qualifications, for example, the BDES or their career ambitions. That motivation to design products, because they have the confidence of sharing their ideas, to share their own decisions, and to taking on that critical thinking, and from exploring the ideas from different perspectives. We have seen that a change in the design products when they've showcased that in our end of year show, that we have shown, they've seen that these products are there to improve the lives of people in their community, which brings me full circle into the fact that the World Health Organization is wanting the community, that mental health should be there for everyone in the community. The numbers have also shown a reflection in the changes that we have seen. So if you have a look, so in 2015-16, the first TMA1 is the first assignment. That's the tutor mark assignment. So the gap, so this is the gap between those without a disability profile and those with a disability profile. So the gap was 6.5%. And at the end of the module, the gap was 3.2%. but then it jumped incredibly high. The gap widened incredibly into 2016, 17, 18, 19. That gap became larger. Funding changed, but then also in 1920, the funding, we had COVID. Okay, so the gap became reduced again. But again, that gap continued to increase. And if you remember, the number of students with a disability profile was also increasing between 2021, 22, 23. But then we brought in these changes, and I'm pleased to say that already there's been a significant change in the number of students that in the gap, attainment gap, from the first assignment and those completing the module. So that was the support that I provided. And perhaps, hopefully, you have some experiences that can resonate with my observations. And do you have your own reflections, your own experience, examples of how those sort of things might work in your institution or have worked in your institution? I have said an awful lot about what's worked for me and for my students, or the students that I have worked with. But perhaps would you be willing to share some of your experiences, observations? Have you seen similar things? How have you overcome things? It's your turn to be able to contribute. So thank you, and I will return once hopefully we've had some other ideas. So please do join in.
Thank you very much, Muriel. That was really insightful, thinking about, how mental health really impacts the experience our design learners have at the distance. And I'm also similarly curious about everyone else's experiences about, have you observed that? Have you observed how creativity impacts mental well-being, or the other way around, how maybe challenges students have impact their ideas, their participation in design projects? I'm quite curious to understand if that's, So Sarah, can I invite you to speak?
Hello, thank you so much can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, thank you so much for that. I've had this on as I've been planning a session for a set of workshops for both Indian students and our students at Manchester School of Art. And I've been with my colleague just sort of saying, we have this kind of sense of knowing what you want, and you have it all in your brain, and you know your design process, and you know what you want to get out the students, and you're really excited. And then you realise the way you communicate that can be so overwhelming. And so we, as Derek knows, we use Miro a lot in our practice. And I've had feedback that my Miro boards are a lot. So as in, like, you just have this sense of they're going to go wham, they're in it and they're immersed, and I realized that actually it's just being at different stages, and you have to switch a lot off and give them moment by moment. And actually I think a lot of what you have said is actually about being inclusive, full stop. That as you improve your communication and you actually really unpick what you're trying to say stage on stage, like a reveal and a reveal, it actually makes all the learners happier. And it makes no one feel excluded. And I think we find this in our studio practice, that we are having more students presenting with mental health problems than we've ever had before. And the biggest issue I can see is they don't want to make any mistakes. And yet in our design practice, it's making those mistakes that you get to the next stage, and you should be really embracing of that. But they do not like to do that. They're very scared of doing it wrong, looking silly, and actually editing up here so much before they actually put anything on paper, because it probably won't work. Someone probably won't like it. And you have to really unpick that and say, you're in a safe space here. We want to see everything that's in your brain, please. And it's challenging. It's really challenging. But what you've just described in your practice is actually will be great for all of our learners. And I think it would just make for the explanations that we have to put into our planning and delivery are getting more and more important to do, as opposed to the assumed level of creativity, understanding, design thinking. It's like we have to really address how we are communicating that so it's inclusive for everybody, is what I would say.
Yeah. Muriel, do you want to respond?
Yeah, it's great to hear that. Thank you for sharing that it's not just us that it doesn't, but yes. And like you say, Sarah, I think certainly over time that we are understanding more how inclusive our practice does need to be. And yes, we too have been there with those, as you say, editing, that they're not putting everything down, and they're not putting, because they don't want that to make that mistake. And yet, as designers, we know that's so important. So the one thing that I think that you also brought out is this secure space, and certainly with the quiet forums and the quiet tutorials, that and over time that I've realized more and more that how important this secure space is to help them put this, to give them the confidence to put everything down and not just edit it, like you say. So I think, yes, you're right, that it is important for everyone, and as not just those with mental health challenges, that secure, that they can feel they can put those things down and not be excluded for any reason, and they can also feel secure about where who they're sharing their thinking with. And whether that security is it something that, you know, when it comes to things like social media and things like that,
Muriel, your sound is off. Muriel, I think you muted yourself accidentally.
Oh, sorry. Okay, but yes, those secure spaces are important.
Mm-hmm. Can I bring in Colby, because you had a comment about the sketchbook, but afterwards I'll go to Mohammed for your question as well. But can I bring you in, Colby?
Yeah, thank you, Muriel, and thank you, Nicole. I think it was a really, really fascinating talk, and just kind of it all resonates with me because I work at the Open University as a digital development manager, and I've been running mindfulness doodling sessions with staff at the OU, and anecdotally we've noticed the same thing. So it just started as an experiment, just kind of like do a bit of doodling before they do a bit, doing their work, and it was just like a few minutes of just doodling for a little bit. And it's a creative act that grounds the person to stop them from feeling anxious. And then we would carry on, obviously with the rest of the activities. I think there is some sort of correlation there, but I don't know. I couldn't put my finger on it. But yeah, I'm more than happy to share some of the links that I found online from different universities around the country that helps you. Great to talk to you about that. Thank you.
Yeah,
yeah.
Go ahead, Nicole.
Go ahead. No, you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. But yes, I mean, I do, when I've taught younger children or whatever, I was a strict teacher that was frowned upon because I would let them doodle. But yes, it would. But I too did that for a reason, that it would calm them, and I think that it can work with them. I have noticed that when we've done that when we used to have face-to-face tutorials before the pandemic and things, I have noticed too that it's sort of that fiddle factor, isn't it, sort of thing that it can alleviate. So yes, but yes, thank you. Please do get in touch and share that. research.
Can I come to Mohammed's question before I come to you, Michael? I know you have your hand up, but there was a question in the chat which I think links a little bit, because Muriel, you just said about doodling helps bring children into a calmer state that they can concentrate and open their mind. And I think there's a huge connection here to the question about what it actually, what indicators do we have for cognitive flexibility? And I personally think, and I hope there's some backup on literature, but I couldn't count it on that yet. But it is this calm state that helps you to open your mind and to experience, sometimes if it comes to those flow experiences, this is an indicator of cognitive flexibility, because your mind opens up, you become more kind of open for experiences, for connections, new connections being made. But Muriel, I'd like to hear from you a little bit, because you read more about that. So the question is, are there any indicators, specific indicators for cognitive flexibility that emerged from your work so far?
So I think you've alluded to some of them in like you say, this that if things can be more calm, we can be more open-minded, working with nature. If we're aware of things around us more, if we've got a secure environment, that too can help develop your cognitive flexibility. That if we feel comfortable about explaining things or sharing decisions, and not having that feeling that we're going to be knocked down with that critical feedback or things like that, that we can take that uncertainty as a good thing, that we can use it. So but certainly there's Fusel Poli, Frere, different people have alluded to sort of domains of thinking, that whether we're open-minded, whether we can work with different English, whether we can work with our language, our expressions, expressing ourselves, but also accepting that we can communicate in different ways, show our feelings in different ways. And again, this helps this calmness, so that you feel that you can express yourself in whichever way that you want, and that it's having that value, that what you're putting across, is that valued, is that believed in, and I think if you've got those reassurances and that security, and you're comfortable with the people that you're with, then you're more likely to be more open. But also too, that part of that security, and part of working with that cognitive flexibility, is also knowing that if you're not coping with it, you can get out of it. So sometimes, for example, so one thing I would do in a face-to-face tutorial is if I knew one of my students was neurodiverse, but if he had an understanding that if he was feeling overwhelmed, he could quite happily go out of the room and nothing would be said. So just doing those, the door was open, just giving him that background, just giving him that understanding, meant that he stayed and he did explore his ideas. He contributed to mind maps discussions and everything else, and he opened up, he was open-minded about his ideas, he had fabulous ideas, and he stayed for the whole of the workshop. So just by giving him the get out clause helped him stay. So
okay, Michael, you've been waiting patiently. I know we are out of time, but you still want to get into your the question you
Thank you. Yes, yeah. I've been patiently listening, but also thinking. I wanted to say something about students fearing bad grades and what we can do to I don't know, take away this anxiety. And the trick that I'm trying to use in our teaching is actually comes from designing, and it's about prototyping. So I say, look, our seminar is a prototype, and I'm using your feedback to change the seminar from time to time, all the time. And also the idea of cybernetics, that's my background, comes in, and systems thinking, and nothing is final. So you're always, whatever you do, it's always evolving, it's always changing. We're never done. We are just doing prototypes. Our seminar is a prototype, your presentation is a prototype, and what the exhibition we're trying to do is also a prototype. And this shows, okay, we're never done. It's an ongoing process. And in a sense, and I hope so, I haven't tested it, but I'm doing this with first-year students that came from school, straight from school in October, and it works really well, yeah. And they made a fantastic exhibition 2 weeks ago. And so the idea of bringing, so I'm teaching theory, bringing the prototyping idea and the theory together and say, look here, we are doing this together and changing together, and this is a process, then I hope that it works, that they lose this anxiety. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. Prototyping. There is that worry, that anxiety about achieving those marks, and yes, I think when it's difficult, particularly for when they first come into they don't always see the prototyping as part of the process, and that if it's not quite right, it's still it needs to be perfect. They want to see it perfect all the time. So I think understanding prototyping as a concept it takes time to establish that, and that certainly I know when I've sort of I always bring in examples in industry. I mean, we don't get these fabulous cars and things like that without prototyping. So they may, but yes, there is that it is a difficult prototyping, and understanding that it can be part of the marks and still achieve good marks even if it doesn't work is a difficult thing for them to get hold of or have the confidence to be secure with. So yes, so thank you for sharing. And yes, particularly I think level 1 students, but then I also find that level 3 students want to miss some of the prototyping out because they're getting too involved, or that whereas sometimes it can be an important part of the development process. So thank you, Michael.
We are running a little bit over time. Derek put a very good comment in the chat about the formative feedback and prototyping, and just the constant feedback, which really is very challenging for distance education. And I guess even in studios, in physical studios, it's becoming more challenging, I guess, because many students now try to kind of back off. I don't know. So I'll officially close the next. I'm so sorry. Do want to click? I'll just leave it for people to read through. Yes. And get in contact with Muriel, maybe, if you want to collaborate, know more, just exchange more ideas. She's going into her empirical focus study now. So maybe there's some tips and hints or ideas you want to share with Muriel.
Yeah, please do get in touch. But many thanks for your contributions, and thank you too for your time and the opportunity. It's been fabulous. So I'm very grateful for the time that you've given me today. So thank you.